posted on our website.
Great. But no pressure. You look all great, just saying.
Gabrielle, since you made that adjustment, now I can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Do you know what it was? I had an external speaker and that was making it interfere.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds a lot better.
Yeah, great.
Well, thank you. And welcome everyone to ATD Learning Lab. This is the second learning lab that we're doing virtually. We started this in September, just giving an opportunity for all of us to participate and actively try something new that we haven't done before. So something challenging, hands-on, and something, well, just interesting for everybody else to try. So we're here to learn. This is an experiment space. So it's yes and space and a space for ideas. So we're very excited to welcome you here today. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with a couple icebreakers. So Rosemary and Gabriel will do 2 icebreakers, so 1 each. And then John will lead us through his activity and I'll lead you through mine. So we should be here until 7:30 or abouts.
Great. And just one thing, because I think for some of our activities, we're going to need people's names. If you can go and click on the participant list, and a few of you, John, definitely John and Nadia, if you could put both your first and last name, if you right, you can change the name that shows up on the screen. If you right click over yourself in the participant list, you can modify that. So because we're going to need your names for, I know for Rosemary's activity.
I'm retarded. How do I put my last name on there?
So you right click on top of your video and then you can do rename.
Ah.
And after you do rename, you can type in your last name right there.
You're so smart.
Keep saying that.
Right.
I was that smart.
I wish everyone luck with my last name.
Okay, great.
Okay. So everybody's set? So we can go ahead.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Awesome.
It's a nice environment, friendly, so I can make mistakes.
Yes.
I have a very easy icebreaker. So it's LinkedIn scavenger hunt. So what you do is each one of you types your link in the chat, and then once it's typed in there, you go in there and look for similarities from those chats, from the LinkedIn profiles, anything similar to what you have. And then you just type in the chat, like if you have anything similar to mine, for example, I'll use Gabby as an example. The 2 of us are on the board, ATD board. So I can just write here, Gabby, ATD NYC board. So keep going and let's see how many people share as much in common as possible. We'll do that for 5 minutes and see how it goes.
I don't
We'll start with the links.
Are you going to put links in chat?
Yep, so everyone post the link to their LinkedIn profile in the chat.
Oh, okay.
But then what are we doing? I'm
and
confused.
then you go to each one of those and just open them up and look for similarities. So like you may have gone to school with somebody.
Okay.
So you write that person's name and then say you went to school together.
Okay.
Or you live in the same town, something like that.
Okay.
And then, yeah, in the chat. So
I'm going to do it right now. So like Rosemary, like I just posted Rosemary on the ATD NYC board. That means that she and I both have that in common.
Does it make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Have fun. Oh.
Toastmasters.
Kate already found Megan. You're on Toastmasters International together. Nice.
It's like Michael and I both have degrees in psychology.
Wow.
I thought it was just going to be the NBA connection.
There's more.
Can you put that in the chat, Sai?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
I have a degree in psychology.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Judith and I have both taught English as a second language.
Where did you teach it?
Here in Connecticut, Guilford Public Schools.
Oh,
How about-
I teach adults. So you
Oh.
were teaching kids.
Okay, good.
But
What
yes,
is the I'm sorry, what is the second language? I'm curious.
well, I teach English
English.
as a second language.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
They're calling
You
it,
teach English to non-English speaking people.
I see.
Yeah.
although these days they're calling it English as a new language because many people already
Have second languages.
Yeah, they already
Keep changing.
Yeah, English is a fourth language.
still called ESL for a lot of people.
And don't forget to type these in the chat because we're going to see who, like how many we can come up with here. My dog is groaning at the door.
Is it a boy or a girl?
A girl. She's an
wants to
old girl.
participate. She wants to. I mean, I know you liked my post about the llama on conference call, so you might let her in. It's up to you.
Kai and I are both on talent management on the board. She's my assistant on the board, so we are both in talent management.
Oh, cool. Connections in common. That's cool. Oh, here she's coming in. Oh, yeah. She was not happy being outside the door.
No,
Would be.
it's lonely.
Don't put child in a corner. Was that song?
Don't put baby in a corner.
Yeah.
The internet is just really sucky. It's taking a long time for everybody's page to come up.
Yeah. And as you're doing this, if there's anyone you're not connected to, do that as well.
Yeah, good idea. Extending connections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, there she is. Oh, lots of people worked at JP Morgan Chase. I always meet other people that work there or Morgan Stanley or a lot of the big banks.
Diane and I both went to teachers college, but I just took the ESL summer certificate program.
I spent way too many years there. I wish it were a short stint. It was not a short stint for me.
By then it takes about a year to learn how to go through that building.
Yeah, although I love that. I'm mesmerized by that building. It
was fascinating.
Very cool. Yeah.
It was like three buildings put together. And
yeah.
the first floor turned into the second floor.
There was a swimming pool. Do you know that? There was a swimming pool.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
What did it get turned into?
I think just storage somehow.
Okay.
And it's very, very interesting.
Interesting place.
Are you still finding some commonalities?
My internet's kind of slow, so I could keep doing it, but you go ahead.
Yeah.
It'll take me a while. I found one, so I'm happy.
It's better than none.
Right.
If you find none, you're totally unique, right? That's
yeah. Is there anybody who has found none? Everybody found somebody good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I haven't, but I'm also like mad slow and a nerd, and I'm trying to be super thorough, and it's not going well.
So I'm curious because I just kind of made up this idea for this activity, and Rosemary's like, I want to try it, and like this sort of thing. Like, are there any ways that it could be structured, or anything that did you find it interesting or useful, or any recommendations for developing this activity a little more?
And I really like the idea because it goes beyond the standard, like, okay, let's just connect. And then all of a sudden you have all these new connections that you actually haven't really gotten to know. So it allows you to get to know people a little deeper. I think maybe just, and because I'm having an internet connectivity issue too, I think maybe if prior to, if we knew who was coming and we could kind of do like a, you know, a search beforehand and spend the time talking about them.
I like it. I like this activity. I think to build on it, what you might do is maybe like I'm just even noticing some themes in what we're writing in the chat. So maybe to do some sort of a breakout exercise after this, like if you were doing this like as a class or something like that, you know, kind of give people an opportunity to kind of break into smaller groups and maybe do 2 exchanges or something. I don't really know. But if it's pure networking, to take that from this first cut to another level, you may want to do something like that. I don't know.
Good idea.
I think also to add a personal element to it, and some of this is a limitation of LinkedIn and the kind of information that people will post on LinkedIn as opposed to something like Facebook. But I think it can be fun to also encourage people to comment on sort of shared interests that are not necessarily where you went to school and where you worked or your professional associations. So some people I think include hobbies or other types of topics that they follow. So that might be a nice thing to add to the prompt as well.
Yeah. Okay. Or maybe like how they structure their About Me section.
That's
really, people do it really creatively.
Great. Any other questions, Rosemary, that you would like to ask before I move on?
I don't have any questions. Does anybody have a question? So if you're not connected with anybody here, please take their LinkedIn information and connect.
Fantastic.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So for this next activity, this is very experimental. So this is based on several theater games that are normally done live, and they're physical activities. And I'm very curious, given the limitations of Zoom and other, you know, web conferencing services, how we can still do things that might be a little bit more interactive in that way. So, so for this is from a series of activities called mirroring activities, and then also one called Who's the Leader, and I've kind of adapted them. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to, and this is a physical activity within the screen, okay? So first, what I want everyone to do is I want you to mirror me, and I want you to mirror everything from what my hands are doing to my facial expressions, so that we all look like we're like just twin mirror images of each other on the screen. So if you haven't yet, what you want to do is if you go to the top right of your screen, you want to make sure for this activity you are on gallery view. So at the top right, you can either select speaker view or gallery view. So make sure that you select speaker view. The other thing is, can everyone—
Gallery view, right?
What?
Gallery, right?
Yeah, gallery view, right? Can everyone raise their right hand? Okay, all right. John, what's your right hand? Oh, there, okay, great, okay. Because sometimes there's actually a thing on Zoom where you can set up mirror image. So sometimes people do this and you'll see the opposite hand, but I think we all have the same hand. Okay, so I'm going to do something, and I want you all to, and so notice that some of our faces look smaller or bigger. So the first thing, I want everyone to put their face, the distance from the screen that their face, oops, sorry. that their face looks about the same size as mine. So either come closer or farther away. You want to make sure that our heads are the same size, okay? Somebody's music is playing. Okay. Now I'm going to make face and I'm going to do something with my hands, and I want everyone to try to mirror it. Okay. And let's try to be still so that we all look the same, and look at which hand's on top and which hand's on the bottom. Okay. Do this? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm slowly going to start moving, and you're going to follow me.
Yeah. Katie's having too much fun.
Okay. Okay. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pass the leadership around. So I'm going to call some names, and then when I call your name, you're going to be leading, and everyone should follow that person. Okay. So I am going to pass it to Emily.
Can't see Emily.
My favorite emoji.
Mine too.
Megan, you're next.
I have to find Megan. Where's Megan?
I realize now you can't look at the screen when I do that.
Yeah.
All right, Sai, take it over.
And raise the roof. All right. Let's pass it over to Nadia.
What? All right, Judith.
Oh.
Kate.
Rosemary.
This is the last person, and then I'm going to change something. Okay. So now what we're going to do is I want everyone to really focus, and I know this is like kind of a funny game, whatever, but now I want you to really focus in being as precise as possible. Like we should be able to take a picture of all of us. Our faces should be the same size. We should have the same facial expression. It should be kind of creepy. If someone were to take a picture of us, they'll be like, what's going on, right? Let's see how exact we can make it.
I have one question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is everyone mirrored or not mirrored?
You want it to
mirrored
look
and
like
unmirrored.
everybody is doing the same thing. So
No, I mean on Zoom, because I had mirrored on Zoom, but then it looked like I was doing the opposite. So
oh,
should I
right.
go back to unmirrored? 'Cause we should all be either
Unmirrored is
on-
easier, I think. So,
Okay.
yep.
How do we change that setting?
Click on video, the
Yeah.
Reference video.
settings.
You would have to go to your settings either in the web version of Zoom or the desktop version of Zoom.
There we go.
Settings there. Yep. Okay.
But Gabby, did you say, is mirror checked or unchecked?
Unchecked is better, I think, for this activity.
Unchecked, okay.
For this, what I want you to do is really, let's see how well we can tune into each other. So in real life, this activity, you would start in pairs and be looking into each other's eyes. And what we want to do now is we want to all be moving where nobody is the leader, yet we're all simultaneously the leader. But we have to keep moving. So we have to be in tune with each other so that we're moving, right? And we're all doing the same thing. Nobody knows who's leading. We're going to see if we can do it as a collective, all right? And very slow, all right? And then I'm going to tell us to freeze at a point where hopefully we all look like we're doing the same exact thing and we're in the exact same position. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's go. Okay, and freeze. All right, so now we're going to try one more version of this. So now I am going to privately in the chat to just one person, I am going to tell that person that they are the leader. The rest of us, we don't know who the leader is. And the person who is the secret leader, your job is to lead, but not make it obvious that you're leading. You don't want anybody to be able to guess that you are the leader, okay? You want to do it in a way that is subtle and see if you can be sneaky so that nobody can guess that it's you. Does that make sense?
No.
What's that? All right, so let me find someone. Oh, sorry. I'm going to.
Who would know who would do this because our hands are up?
Yes, so in the chat, you'll get a private message from me in the chat if it is you.
But we will see who goes like down with their hands, you know.
Well, everyone has to go down with their hands so we know it's not.
Yeah,
we don't know who
yeah.
it
How
is.
about
We should start with our hands down, but again, you have to keep moving. So don't try to do something weird. Now, the rest of you, you don't know who the leader is. So again, we're mirroring everybody and no one. Okay, we have to all be doing the same thing. So if you see someone, you know, tuck their hair behind we all have to copy whatever other people are doing when I say go, right? But the leader, you want to try to impact what we're doing without us knowing it. Make sense? All right, let's try it. We have to keep moving, folks. Okay. Okay, let's try to get hands in there or something, folks. Okay, and the leader, you want to try to make us get to somewhere that's really specific, where you knew you were the one who led it. Okay. Does anyone, oh, geez, sorry. Can anyone guess who the leader is?
Diane.
I thought it was Diane.
Yeah.
Two people think it's Anne.
Kai.
Emily.
Emily. Okay.
Kai.
Guesses?
Kai.
I thought it was Kai. I thought it was Diane at first, and then I thought it was Kai.
Diane for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack.
Wasn't me.
Who was it? Who was it?
Judith.
Oh, Judith. Oh,
Really?
okay.
Judith.
Okay.
Good job.
So I don't know. That was, okay, so that was the activity. I want to stop right now because I just want to debrief it because I'm not sure what I thought of that. You know, in real life, this activity, there's a version called Who's the Leader, where you send one person out of the room. There's a leader appointed in a circle. Everyone else knows who the leader is, and they're all following the leader, but they're trying to make it so the person who comes back in the room can't guess who it is. And then there's other ones where, you know, a mirroring activity where you shift who's the leader. You don't tell who's leading. And it's a really, you can use this activity as a metaphor for collaboration, for different styles of leadership, what it feels like to follow, what it feels like to lead. how far, and you can push it. Like if you go too fast, people can't follow you. There's so many really, really rich ways of debriefing this. I'm not sure it's really weird on the screen. I'd like to hear what you think, because I think some of us had the mirroring thing on and some of us didn't. So
that was confusing because it still looks like, all right, I have mirroring off. So if I'm doing what you're doing, when I look at me, it looks like a mirror of you.
Yeah. So everyone use their right hand again.
See, this is my right hand.
Right. So, but you look, when you look at yourself on the screen, it looks like you're raising your left hand on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Which is confusing. It bugs me because I usually have mirroring on. So
I think
the fact that it's
on,
hard.
Mirroring on, because then we see ourselves the way what we think we're doing. It looks like that.
Yeah, I think the mirroring should be on, not off. Otherwise, yeah.
And if nothing else, it advises people that option exists, which many people do not. And if they've got something in the background with their name on it, it's going to be backwards.
It was a workout for me because I'm on a yoga ball right now, so trying to keep my core stability.
Oh wow!
Exercise bike.
Had something to say.
Yeah, I really like this activity. It's very fun, but before we're doing this activity, I feel it's necessary to give the participants clear instruction. Now please click your gallery view. Now please go to the video setting and set your mirror on video.
Right.
So everybody is on the same page. I guess we will make this activity go more smoothly.
Right. Yep. So now I know, because I think it's disorienting to see yourself opposite. Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the big thing. Like, okay, try this again, but with the mirroring on. Diane, you had something?
No, I was just practicing with the mirroring. I didn't know where it was, so now I learned that. So are you saying that it's like I'm not mirrored now? So mirroring is exactly what you see exactly what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Are we saying that we should have did this with mirroring or not?
I think we're saying we should have it checked for this activity, because when it's unchecked, if you raise your right hand, when you look at yourself on the screen, it looks like you're raising your left hand. Whereas if you have it checked, then it looks it looks
confusing. It's very
but my thing is, like, could you get, like, when you do this in a live setting, it's really cool when you get a whole group and you can have people spread across the room and people don't know who they're following, or people don't know who they're leading. You pick someone to follow and you can get the whole group moving in sync with each other. And it's a really cool experience in terms of collaboration and synergy and that sort of thing. I'm not convinced you can replicate that in Zoom, but go ahead, Mariel.
Yeah, for me, for almost the entire exercise, my brain was still trying to make sense of the mirror, not mirror thing. So I don't think that I would have walked away with the same types of lessons that I could bring into a debrief and actually like think through how what I was doing might relate to team dynamics, for instance. One other thing might also be, it's a little difficult for people who have Zoom backgrounds on if precision of action is important. Sometimes like someone's arm just disappears because they, it's like it's not being picked up on the Zoom background. So that might be another thing that complicates it a little bit.
Yeah.
I also think the size of the group. So I think if you were, I have to process it more about how if I would use this, which I probably would try to do something like this. I think maybe 12 is a good number. I think if you're doing this with much more than we have, it's even more it's too much.
Yeah.
So I think maybe limiting it, and I even wonder if you have a bigger group, if you put one other group in a breakout group and kind of gave the same set of instructions, and maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud in terms of how you might use this. I kind of like it, but
I mean, I'm trying to get out of just the talking heads thing of being in Zoom, right? And try to get something where we're actually trying to tune into each other, which it's really hard to connect with each other in that way you can do in person through Zoom. And so that was why I wanted to experiment. So this is really helpful. So thank you, everyone. Great.
Thank you.
You, Kate and John.
Sure. John, you're up.
Ready? Okay. it's interesting that the last two exercises were around leadership, because those who have seen me before know I'm obsessed with leadership. That's the subject that fascinates me. And I have put together an experiment built around a test structure to see if we can get to understand leadership, or maybe at least share some common ideas about what that means. I was asked first to talk about me and where do I get off discussing with intelligent people like yourself what leadership is and what it isn't. And the answer is that I've taught leadership for over 30 years to executives, managers, supervisors, and professionals at little companies like General Electric, Johnson & Johnson, MetLife, Citibank, Chase, JP Morgan, Lockheed Martin, United Hospitals of Newark, Shore Memorial Hospital, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Pfizer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I won't bore you with the whole list. So I believe that I've learned a little bit about this that may be useful. The exercise today is in the form of a quiz. I have taken the subject of leadership and boiled it down to 5 questions. And what I'm going to ask all of you to do is, through the magic of Kate, she's going to set up some polling mechanism, and each one of you can vote. On each question, there'll be 5 answers. So let me first review the questions with you. What is leadership?
John, would it be okay if I put the poll up so you can go
Yes.
through the questions? Okay.
Yeah, as long as nobody votes just yet.
Okay, I'll launch the poll and so you can go through the questions. So everybody should be able to see the poll in their screen.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
No, I'll take it back. Please pull it back, Kate.
Okay.
Because I don't want the answers just yet. I want to talk about what is leadership. And I'm curious, we've got 13 other people here. What do you understand by the word leadership? What is it?
Are you asking us to
Yes,
say?
I'm asking for comment before I do the quiz.
Someone who inspires.
That's a good one, okay.
The predecessor to followership.
How is leadership connected to followership?
You're not a leader if no one's following.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
Good
different
point.
types, and there's different
Excellent.
types of followers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's followers that are like voluntold followers, and there's followers that, you know, it's either a push-pull.
Commitment or compliance.
Yep.
Thank you, Michael. That's excellent. Okay, so that's the first question. What is leadership?
Did Deborah did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Yes, I did. I wasn't sure. I think a leader looks inwards at the group which he or she wants to lead, understands the dynamic there, and also looks outwards, and as we say, is in business, is on the balcony, knows what is on the horizon and how to lead or get the group from A to B to C.
Okay, that's a group perspective. Very good one. Thank you, Deborah. Anybody else? Then I will go ahead and move on to question number 2, which hopefully becomes obvious. What does a leader do? And again, I'm asking for comments from the group.
Build a team and make the team work together.
A leader makes the team work together, okay?
Achieves outcomes, has set strategy, has a vision, inspires, is a role model, is credible, has integrity.
Would you like to teach this course?
I do.
What she said.
You said it all, Diane.
I'm also in leadership, so.
Oh, okay. Can you play that list back again, please? It was a lot.
I would say a leader sets the tone and the environment under which people can do their best work, reach their potential for the better of the group and for the organization. So it's really about creating an environment that's fruitful for what you're trying to achieve, both for the individuals and for the organization.
Also makes tough decisions.
Okay.
I feel like it depends if we're discussing what it is functionally versus what good leadership or good leader is. Because I feel like we naturally gravitate towards saying what good leadership might be, but I'm not sure if that's the definition of leadership. If that makes sense. I know I'm kind of going back, but we're talking about what it should be versus I don't know if that's what it is. Because sometimes a manager can be the leader making decisions, doesn't mean that they do it, that they're not selected by the group. There are some people that you want to naturally follow and you don't even know why.
Right. Is it positional authority or earned authority?
Some you follow because you're told to follow. Some rise as leaders because they have some of these qualities we just talked about. So maybe I'm just getting too philosophical, but that's why I was kind of stumped, because I'm like, are you asking what leadership is, can be, or what good leadership is?
That's a really good point, Nadia, because I actually, I went to this summit with the Neuro Leadership Institute. I don't know if anyone with them a few years ago, and they did this really great thing about the paradox of power. And they define power as somebody who has decision-making authority over others. And I think a lot of times that's kind of the bare bones definition within an organization of who's considered a leader, but some of those people are not what we would consider good leaders, right? But they do have authority over others within whatever structure they're in. So that's a really good distinction, I think.
Somebody before Megan made the observation that there's leaders who ascend to power, and then there are leaders who are put into power, and that's a different set of characteristics. Please go ahead, Megan.
I was just going to say how Gallup defines it as someone who creates stability, builds trust, shows compassion, and creates hope.
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with level, right? So that could be somebody of any rank or status.
Yeah, they also say a leader can be at any level. There's no...
I really like the point that, Gabrielle, you had made earlier about a leader setting the tone for the environment. And I think that relates to what Diane mentioned about setting an example, because the culture of a group or an organization is ultimately set by the leader. When the followers observe certain behaviors in the leader, then they know, oh, this is acceptable here. This is how we do things here. And they learn from the leader as a role model. They imitate those behaviors, and then it gets around to the whole organization.
I want to comment on the power, because I think there's different uses of power. There's personal power, and then there's hierarchical power. So there's personal power, like there's different power sources. And I think a leader also exerts the appropriate use of power in the appropriate situation. So there's different times when the power should be enhanced in different types of power, and certain times it should be kind of toned down. So I'd also say the appropriate use of power would be something I would add.
Okay. I'm going to have to rewrite this entire thing now because of this conversation.
But there's an interesting case study in that going on though right now, isn't there, Diane, with Governor Cuomo, who's someone whose use of authoritative power was actually something that people complained about right up until it became something that was really important to his constituents.
Right, and that's what that's the type of power that's needed right now in a world of fear. People are looking for someone to be more authoritative, which that style might not flow as well when things are calmer in New York. I'll just say calmer. I don't know if New York's ever calm, but
I like how you put New York in there too.
not as crazy as it is right now. So it's and I'm always fascinated by power dynamics. Because I also think it also a lot of has to do with how people are influential and how people see leaders as being influential. So,
Katie, are we recording this session?
We are recording this session.
Excellent.
We have
then everybody should get a copy of this, and I'll need to study it. In the interest of time, I'm going to move ahead to my third question. How many levels of leadership are there that we have to be interested in and look to support?
Can you define levels?
Yeah.
Can you say that again?
Organization levels, sorry.
Oh, okay.
What was the question?
How many levels of leadership are there that we should be interested in?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you may want to consider is that the idea of servant leadership that considers everybody a leader.
Mm-hmm.
So there you would have many levels to consider.
Yes.
And also, I've seen it broken up several times about leading yourself, leading others, and leading the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think earlier to what Diane was saying, and I think also what I was thinking when I made my original comment, it's like, I feel like it's so context dependent on the situation and the need, because you can lead by consensus in one situation, and there are other situations there is absolutely no pragmatic or other sense to lead this way, because we're never going to get anywhere. Like in crisis, or I'm thinking the military, where completely does not fly this all leadership, you know, everyone's included in decision making, but then we go back to like, is leadership about decision making and all of that? But anyway, context I think is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're returning back to the point earlier about, you know, when we talk about levels of leadership, whether leadership is a title or is leadership a set of behaviors, both on the part of the leader as well as the people who are choosing to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the idea that you can exhibit leadership behaviors or be a leader at really any level of an organization is probably, you know, something that we've all seen depending on the situation.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept, Mariel, that you can exhibit leadership at any level, whether you are officially a leader or not.
Yeah.
There's actually a concept called peer leadership, which actually involves the opportunity for people who are peers within an organization. Some definitely demonstrate leadership capabilities, even if the organization has not granted them a title.
And for me, because I'm fascinated by influence, that's where I also always struggle, because you don't have to be formally or informally a leader, but you can lead in a very indirect way by virtue of influence and how much social capital you have with others. So influence can be in many ways much more powerful than being a leader in any objective or explicit way.
Well, a salesperson is a leader even though they don't have any authority over the client that they're talking to. So that's a good example. Fourth question is, what are the soft skills that leaders need to have?
I think we touched on that a little bit in terms of being able to influence, being able to communicate effectively. I think one thing that leaders, good leaders generally are able to do is to clarify roles. So if you have a team, what is it that individuals are meant to do? If you're leading an entire organization, what is the expectation of different departments or different segments of the organization? So kind of clarifying that is an important skill for any leader.
Clarification. That's a good one, Si. Thank you.
Emotional intelligence.
Okay.
Empathy, the ability to understand what others might be feeling and then adjust accordingly.
What the last two of you are describing is a healthy adult as opposed to a neurotic adult.
Are we talking about anybody in particular right now?
No examples, no visuals.
Couldn't imagine who that might be.
I've been doing an experiment for years, asking groups of people in leadership class to describe the best boss they ever had and the worst boss that they ever had. And the worst boss that they had every single time comes out to be a mean, neurotic, selfish person that has deep trouble just connecting with other human beings. I'm jumping ahead. Okay, last question, and then I promise we'll put up the poll and move this forward. What's the best way to learn leadership?
Do it.
Being a leader.
Also observing leadership when you have the chance to watch really great leadership in action and to be on the receiving end of the empowerment that creates. Makes
But
it very
also bad leaders. I feel like I've learned how to be a good leader by what I don't want to do from what I've experienced with bad leaders. So that
there's actually a body of research about that. That the first predictor of being a good leader in the absence of having been educated. And I got to be honest, I do leadership development, so I'm pretty partial to it, like formal learning. But the number one predictor of people in the absence of that being good leaders is whether they've had good leaders. The second is if they've had bad leaders, but the key is they have to know that the leaders were bad. Ones that don't.
Yeah.
I think that's what good. We're just like parenting, right?
Right. Wow.
I agree.
I'm also thinking, yeah, go ahead, Della.
I agree. I think it also relates to what Marielle said about being able to observe a good leader. It goes back to how a leader is a role model, because they're also a role model for future leaders who imitate their actions and sort of learn how to do from watching them.
Yeah,
Deborah,
that's an excellent observation. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add, I mean, the one thing that I try to instill, I mean, all these answers are great and important. On some level, they're all wrong, because the people that you're leading are the ones who actually decide if you're good at it. And so asking them should probably be at the top of the list, you know, especially at any given point in time.
That's kind of exactly what I was going to say. A lot of people get confused with the golden rule, you know, treat others as you want to be treated, and it's 100% wrong. You treat others as they want to be treated.
The platinum rule.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's almost like because the question was, how do you learn? And obviously you have practice and all of that and the things we've discussed, but there's probably value in some formal training as well around you know, a lot of what you guys, that's not my background from college, but a lot of you guys are in psychology and organizational psychology, understanding people, behavioral psychology, and how people get motivated, all these things. There's value in actually formally studying that, not just flying by the seat of your pants.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, my little quiz will now appear very thin and inadequate after this conversation. But thank God it's being recorded so I can improve it in the future. So here is my very simple-minded little leadership quiz. The 5 questions I've already asked you, and I've got 5 preset answers. And I'm going to ask you, Kate, is the polling ready?
Yeah, it should be up. Can you see it on your screen?
Oh, you just, okay. If you will, please, here, I guess in mine. If you think leadership is giving orders to all, meeting all goals, schedule meetings, build a team, avoid conflict, I think you have to choose just one. So if everybody will please choose one. Does everybody have this?
Everybody's voting on 7 questions, right?
Yeah, we have to answer all of them, I think, before you get the results, John.
What can you describe again?
I'm sorry.
How many?
Let me go through them one at a time. That was number 1. What does a leader do? Plan and control work, make big decisions, make everyone happy, get everyone to obey, and how do I scroll down?
There's
Kate?
a thing on the right that you can click. So if you see
bar.
the poll, there is a bar on the right, and then you can drag it down.
Thank you. Oh dear. Set priorities and do them, get them done. Number 3, how many levels of leadership do we need to support?
I don't understand that question. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't either.
Fair enough. Is your operating assumption that leadership is one uniform thing that everybody does? Or are there different levels of leadership, particularly within an organization?
I'm still wondering what, you know, are you literally talking about like the org chart and how many levels there are, like C-level, middle manager, frontline, or
Yes.
do you? Okay, yeah. So then I would say probably just, I mean, if we want to break it down to that level, just those 3 levels.
Okay, then your answer would be 3. But that's a correct understanding of the question. Whether the question is good or not, that's another question. What are the leadership soft skills appropriate for each level? And obviously try to keep it very short. So the first one is to communicate, to motivate people. Is it finance and business? Does it depend on the level of those 3, 4, 5 levels? Conflict resolution, or to coach and counsel? Which, in a forced choice environment, which of those 5 would you pick? And finally, as all of us have some interest in learning and development, what's the best way to learn those skills? Have a coach or be mentored, do role play with observers, giving you feedback, online video scenarios, those, video clips of people in the leadership situation and they ask you questions, listening to TED Talks on leadership, or a behavioral simulation in which we model simulated people like the last one I showed you guys, with simulated people to get them to do things and see how well they do it depending on how you do it. So if everybody will please take 2 minutes and vote, and then with technical help from my betters, we will compile the results.
Should we answer the other 2 questions?
Please answer all 5 questions.
There's 7.
John, I added the extra 2 questions that you had. So it.
Oh dear, you're way ahead of myself. Yes, I'm sorry.
6 and 7 sound like somebody already did this research and you're supposed to guess what it is. It doesn't say what's the maximum percentage they should spend. It says what's the maximum they actually spend. So you're supposed to guess in general what supervisors generally do.
Okay, fair enough, Judith. This is based on actual time analysis of supervisors.
Okay, so we're guessing.
And well, there happens to be a hard number, but it is assumed that supervisors spend all day with their people. Well, that turns out not to be true. So based on research that we've done, the question to you is, and perhaps Judith, it's an unfair question, what is the maximum percent of time that supervisors actually spend with their own people?
Okay.
5, 18, 30, 50, 75. And then the same numbers come again. What percent of leaders who take leadership training courses, particularly learning soft skills, ever apply those soft skills back on the job? And again, you're limited to 5 choices: 0, 18, 30, 50, 75%. Thank you for adding those in, Kate. So is everybody in a position to vote? Yeah, cast your...
We have 11, we have 2 more people voting.
Oh, okay.
So I think everybody voted, so I'm going to end the poll.
Okay.
And share results.
Oh.
What does blue and red mean? Is red the correct answer?
No, it means that more people answered the red and less people answered the blue.
Okay. And the other ones nobody answered.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the orange line is the longest line.
Mm-hmm.
And the blue line is a shorter line, and everything else is 0. So people in this particular select group have very strong opinions, and they seem to coincide or correlate around certain particular levels.
That's interesting.
What is leadership? Obviously, all of you agree it's not giving orders to everybody, and it's definitely not avoiding conflict. And scheduling meetings an administrator can do. So it's either meeting all goals, which is my personal preference, and most of you, however, feel that building a team is the more appropriate answer of the limited choices to what is leadership. What does a leader do? Plan and control work? No. Make everybody happy. Thank God all of you understand that that is not the purpose of what a leader spends their time doing. And getting everyone to obey is important in Russia and in China and in the Philippines, but not necessarily in the rest of the world. Making big decisions is what we think that they do, but in my opinion, what a leader really does is to set priorities and then make sure that they get done in a quality way on time. Now this is really interesting. I think, Sai, you influenced the group here. You came up with the number 3 in an organization.
I was just exhibiting leadership skills.
And very modestly, too. My personal answer is 5. And the 5 that I had in mind are the peer leaders that we talked about, supervisors or team leaders, then there are managers, then there are leader of leaders, and then there are executives who have to run an entire business or a nonprofit or a medical center. And in my view, they all make very different decisions and they all have very different sets of skills. But one man's opinion.
And there's actually a book about the 5 levels of leadership. And so that's...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's John Maxwell, actually. There's a book called 5 Levels of Leadership, and it's very similar to what you just laid out, John. So you might want to look at. In fact, I actually have a stack of cards here about leadership value cards. It's like a game that goes with that program, but it's actually a pretty good model to use, I think.
If you'll please send me a note about that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm just going to. I'll type it in the chat too.
In question number 5, what's the best way to learn those skills? I'm happy to see for the first time that the group and I agree. The single best way is coaching, or I prefer mentoring. A coach to me is somebody external. A mentor is somebody within the organization, probably at a senior level, who takes an interest in an individual and wants to help them grow and do the job better. And I agree with your decision in this case. The second best are not role plays, not watching video scenarios or listening to talks on leadership, but entering into a behavioral simulation that models people and the way they behave, and then try to make decisions to improve their performance. And now for my 2 trick questions. What is the maximum percent of time supervisors actually spend with their own people? Some of you thought 5%, somebody thought 18%. Oh, this is interesting. Those who thought 75%, please, why? Nobody remembers voting 75%? Okay. Well, the answer, according to the studies that we did, was at most, they spend 30% of their time dealing with their own people, communicating with them, engaging with them. And so the question becomes, why historically have we spent so much time teaching soft skills to supervisors who use them only 30% of the time? And then my next question, which very much relates to it, what percent of leaders who take leadership training courses, specifically those classic soft skills, communications, motivation, listening, conflict resolution, ever apply those soft skills back on the job? And you guys are truly amazing because you got the right answer. 18%. How did you know that?
John, just as an essence of time, I wonder if there is any debrief that you want to do in the next few minutes so we can move on to the next activity as well. Just to give people some time to reflect on what they just did, or what are you trying to get them out.
Okay, thank you for the time clock. I'm basically done. You guys have done all the work.
And John, I'm just curious, like the intent of the activity, like what context would you do this in, and what were you hoping the participants would get would take away from the activity. And because I think in terms of, you know, what people felt was effective about the activity, it's helpful to know what the intention was.
My interest is and has been research on leadership. What is it? And I'm serious that you all have added enormously to my body of knowledge today with your discussion. So I've benefited. I guess everybody else will have to decide and tell us if they've benefited, and if so, what way. So my goal, Gabriel, is just to get more research, to amplify, to clarify, because I believe that there are a lot of serious misconceptions about what leadership is and what leaders do. And I'm trying to get the people that I talk to focus. And I believe, until you guys tell me otherwise, that this is a very effective way to get focus on the subject of leadership. The end.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna stop sharing the results right now. Any last moment closeouts, or how do you feel? John, you okay?
Are you asking me?
Yep.
I've concluded my remarks. I got tremendous benefit out of this, and we'll pour over the recording to capture everybody's ideas.
Great. Well, thank you so much, John, for presenting this. This is interesting. And one, I think it's a great discussion. And two, I think everybody tried polling. So if we use Zoom, we can try polling ourselves and see how we can use different tool sets and ideas that you brought in our own work. So the next activity I will do. So this is going to be, yay! So what I'm trying to do, and I modify this activity, I think like 18 times today. So this is where I'm at. I'm trying to find the right activity for identifying biases, stereotypes, and blind spots for the off-the-shelf course I'm redesigning, which is Generations in the Workplace. And what I found a social identity circle exercise that I think I could be using in this specific example. And I want you all to try it. But what I want you to do, and I'm grateful to have different generations here, is just to think through, one, the exercise, how you feel going through this exercise, one. Two, how it can be applied to more of a generation in a workplace environment. And three, what do you think about the tool I'm about to introduce you to? So there are three different objectives, and there is a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share you in a chat a link. If you can just go to that link, you will see, basically I'm going to share my screen if that's easier. So you would see so sort of social identity map. I know we don't have much time, so I'm just going to walk you through what it is. So social identity map is identifying what's the core of your identity, what the identity you choose, and what's given for you by birth. So there are some examples I give on the left, some instructions. Basically, I'm going to summarize what it is. So each person completes their own identity map. They identify like terms. So for example, where were you born, your age, your culture, your life experiences, your career interests, your health, all these terms. So think through like what terms would you use to identify yourself? Basically, what are the terms that you choose to complete your own identity? And what terms are attributing to how you're leading, and what terms are detracting about how you're leading. And so I think what I'm going to do in an essence of time, you can go to the link itself, or you can just think about on the screen itself. So what you can do is use the chat function.
In the chat?
Yep.
Okay.
Use the chat function to put the terms that you use to identify yourself. So if you just put on the chat like some of the things that you see on the screen as you use for your own identity. Just take a few minutes to go through it, and it doesn't have to be the list that it's here. Just think through, like, what would you choose to identify your own identity? Like, how do you choose to identify yourself?
Can you give us an example?
What do you want to find out?
So what I want to find out is, one, I wanted to walk it through more deeply, but I don't have much time to walk through it. But what I'm trying to do is identify how to use this activity more applied to generations in the workplace. So for example, like what kind of terms would I use for people to think through more about how they bring their own events or values, or how they grew up to the workplace. So how it is different for all of us. So what I'm trying to do is, like, what terms would be helpful to use for more of a generations in a workplace environment topic.
Katie, may I make a suggestion about that?
Yep.
So there's been some research about like how generations define themselves, and one of the interesting ways that I've heard about conceptualizing generations is more about events. So, you know, for example, recognizing certain events and how that impacted your decision making. Like the classic example would be, you know, for people's grandparents, remembering like the Great Depression, and then all of the behavioral changes that came out of the Great Depression, and then, you know, World War II. What was that experience like? So rather than like attributing personal characteristics based on age, talking more about experiences, and then that also can inform how people talk about themselves, right? I was looking at your center square there, you know, something like gender. You know, if you ask somebody from, you know, an older generation, let's say the, you know, baby boomer generation, you know, it's strictly male female. If you go down to Generation Z, you're going to get, you know, something like, you know, cisgender, you know, non-binary. I mean, terminology that like has no reference point for older generations. So those would be my two suggestions.
But it would be interesting to see, for example, what I was thinking about how to use this exercise in that course is thinking about all the things you just mentioned. So your gender, that's why it's there also, because each generation may come out with different ideas. And I want to just look at the data and just see, like, people who are doing this exercise, like, look, you have all different answers. Why? So I'm wondering, like, also from the experiences, what are experiences that I can put here to highlight? Like, is it specific examples, or how detailed would I go into these terms?
I think it would help me if you gave an example, because don't know what you're looking for. It's not very clear to me. So if you give an example, it would help somebody like me.
So just an example, like, what terms do you use to identify yourself? So choose any of them here and put them in a chat. Like, what terms do you use to identify yourself?
I think Rosemary is asking, like, an example of that would be you demonstrate it.
Oh, okay. So how I identify myself? I identify myself as a white woman who is Russian American. I think that's how I identify myself. But like, what do I hold like most close as probably identity of being Russian American than any other identities that I think I identify myself as a group, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but you have got that, there's a circle there that has got 3 different spots to be filled in. So where does the Russian American come in?
Nothing here specifically. I just chose as generic as possible, but you're raising a good point. Like maybe I'll be adding more of a, I thought about natural, like cultural background. I think I added natural, like culture here. I don't know if it's.
It might be farther.
I think it's nationality.
Yeah, nationality.
Is what.
No, you say natural culture.
Yeah, there's natural culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just have a question. So what is the, so sorry about the dog. So what is the outcome that you're looking for? Like, what do you want people to do as a result of this activity or this course you're developing? I feel like there's like a lot of activities, especially soft skills, that are just around kind of awareness and especially, and they can be interesting, but what was the impetus? Like, why are you teaching this class, and what do you want them to walk away with?
That's great. So this specific class is off the shelf. So off the shelf offering for generic audience. So that would be modified depending on the audience. So off the shelf, meaning that will be trained majority, like I'm considering any generic audience, any age, any generations coming in this class and getting the basic information on working with different generation in the workplace. What are your commonalities? What are differences? So what are things that I should keep in mind while working in a workplace? Like what's my preference style? What's the other from a person from a different generation? Maybe they have less use of technology, or maybe they prefer a different communication style. So, but specifically, I'm focusing this specific exercise and thinking about on biases, stereotypes, and other things that come to mind when we work from people from different generations. And so that's why I took this exercise specifically. So what I'm trying to get out of here is more of participants to emerge, like what are things, thoughts, emotions emerge from this exercise? Like maybe there is some aha moments that they can emerge.
So are you trying to kind of show how people from different generations, you know, one generation might say, oh, I'm an Irish American Catholic, and another generation might, you know, lead with, you know, I'm a leadership and development director, and just kind of see what people prioritize in terms of how they identify themselves?
What they prioritize and what some things may emerge. Like, so what I'm saying, like they might see the difference, as Sai just mentioned, like they might see the difference how people like identify like genders, like even think about gender, like different generations come up with different lists. I just want to show everybody how there is a difference, and not just in our own identity, but also like how we prioritize based on the influence of how we grew up.
Kate, can I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
There's it's interesting that you're saying that, because I think life stage has a huge impact on that, right? Like if you imagine somebody in their early 20s, their responsibilities are significantly different than even somebody who's in early 30s or mid 30s or early 40s, right? Part of that has to do with the stage of they happen to be in, right? If they're single, they don't have as much responsibility versus someone who's married with children, or even going beyond that, somebody who has children that are in college, or then even somebody who's dealing with like grandkids or other types of responsibilities. So looking at it from that perspective, like almost like how whether or not you're in the sandwich generation where you're caring for parents and you're caring for children at the same time, I think that could be a really interesting framework to play around with, especially given our current like work from home situation, right? Because in some, for some people, they're literally by themselves in an apartment, or they're dealing with like roommates. Other folks are surrounded by children and their parents and their spouse, and that I think creates a very different dynamic within that space.
Yeah. Something, and I'm not sure if this is like a distraction to the exercise or if this is something that might enrich it, but definitely a question that came to my mind when you introduced this, and you also introduced like sort of the different circles of identity, was how relative it feels to me. Like what I notice about my own identity is strongly influenced by who's around me at any given moment. And so, do I notice that I'm a woman in a room full of other women, or do I mostly notice that I'm a woman when I'm in a room full of men? And so, I when I apply a generational lens on that, I guess I'm kind of curious what sort of how a person's conception of like their core identity might change if they are the only person of their generation in a broader group. And so I think that might be an interesting angle, an interesting way to get at some of the things that might make us feel uncomfortable or nervous when we're interacting with people who come from a different generation.
Do you think, sorry, do you think there is a way to kind of find a way to call it out in this exercise, or do you think it's something like a separate thing that will be introduced to kind of highlight that?
Is part of this exercise sort of is pre-work for this exercise almost identifying what the stereotypes are?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a question. So I'm still designing it, so I'm not exactly sure what it will be like. So that's why I'm asking everybody's like, what's your take on it? Like any ideas that you have to kind of enrich it.
In my question, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Did I cut someone off? I couldn't tell because
it's okay. Go ahead.
Slight delay. So okay. I always go back to the question like, okay, so yes, it's good to be aware of what the differences are, what the stereotypes are, what our identities are, but what do you want them to do with their awareness of that? Like, what do you want them to actually do differently? Is there a problem? Is it that, people from different generations aren't working well together? If so, like, what exactly are they doing? Are they not communicating with each other? Are they saying things that offend each other? Do you want them to do you want to reduce the frequency at which different generations say things that offend each other? Do you want to have people from different generations communicate amongst each other more frequently? Like, what do you actually want them to do? Because I think the risk with a lot of soft skills courses like this is that you stay up in this kind of esoteric awareness, and where it's all a big picture and nobody knows what to do with that in a practical way. And I think when we're talking about workplace learning, we have to always go back. It's like, what do you want to be different between somebody who does this course or whatever and someone who doesn't?
Thank you. Mariel, I saw your hand up.
Oh no, first I should let you answer the question. I just wanted to contribute a recommendation for that. But
yeah, sure. So Gabrielle, thank you so much for for all these questions. And I think it will vary depending on the audience of the course. And of course, that would vary dependently on what questions you ask. But as a setup for this exercise is just being as generic as possible. What do we want from different generations? We want them to work together. We want them to understand how to work with different generations. We want them to make a team. We want to be a productive team. So going from just a very, very generic lens and trying to design for that first, and then find a way to customize depending on the audience and depending on their problems.
So is it about raising awareness, how gender changes, your gender influences, age. Your age influences how you treat others, and so you need to be aware of that. So I'm teaching you how to be aware of that by doing all these exercises.
Understanding there are biases and there are stereotypes and there are blind spots that we all have in mind, and being part of our own generations and being influenced how we grew up and what we value is part of that.
Mm-hmm. In terms of bringing it to a very tactical, what do I actually do with this? How do I change my behavior in the workplace? Something that I've seen that sounds really cool is the user manual concept. And so it basically lays out certain, it is a user manual for hey, if I have this constellation of factors, you might want to know that these are my preferences when it comes to how I communicate, or these are the general times that I'm online and offline. And I first actually came across this as people were transitioning to remote work, and people with different caregiver needs were needing to actually put together user manuals for okay, this is the time that I can attend meetings or not. Here's how you should reach out to me if it's something urgent. Here's how you should get me on a brainstorm, etc. And I found it a really interesting concept. And so it feels like it could be applied here. I haven't seen it directly applied to generations, but something like that might work.
I hear what you're saying. And I think it may be something to do with identify individual preferences of working, but apply to generations. So for example, if I'm thinking about MBTI or DISC or how people use that and working with teams, so I'm this needs to be more applied to generations. I don't know if there is a tool that exists, or maybe just creating like, this is how people from different generations could work.
I think talking about self-identity is I think that's a pretty heady topic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to ask people in the moment, and when I look at that chart, it feels overwhelming.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, there's so many directions and not enough time to really kind of explore this more, but those are just some of my initial thoughts. Is I like having teasers so if people are stuck. And obviously, I know you're short on time, but giving people time to process what self-identity means to them, maybe as one cut on it, and then somehow identifying where people are generationally, and then doing kind of like a mini research to figure out, okay, if I'm in this generation, these are my responses, and try to make meaning of it. But I don't think that's an on-the-spot activity. I think that's more on the back end for you. So I think it all goes back to what other people have been saying. What's the purpose of the exercise, and what is it that you're trying to do? I mean, I like the concept of it. I just feel like self-identity that's so heady. So thinking about how you want to parse that back a little bit, and do you have these people for more than one session? Is it just one session? So that's just some of the comments that I would offer.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's so cross-sectional that it can go haywire like very quickly. And I was thinking, if your objective is to somehow teach people their implicit biases and presumptions about others based on age, it's almost like, are there common known stereotypes around age? Like young people don't know what they're talking about and they're reckless, and then old people are not tech savvy or conservative, like famous stereotypes about the different generations, and then think of exercises that would highlight that or contradict the assumption in a way. Like I've been in exercises where you have a room full of people, and based on this cross-sectionality, you make them go in different corners based on different things. Like, who here has an apple and uses all of that, go in this corner and the other. And then you start to see that same thing you're thinking that old people wouldn't know or that young people wouldn't know, you actually have in common. It's very visceral to see yourself sitting in that group with other people all of a sudden. Like maybe things like that. Go ahead, Gabby.
No, I'm sorry. No, it's just interesting because what you're talking about, Nadia, is I used to, when I started as a trainer, 20 some years ago, I did a lot of diversity training, and that was a really popular model we used of pointing out people's differences and then getting them to talk. And what's interesting is that the research has shown in terms of diversity training that actually that approach doesn't actually increase diversity within companies. Actually, the best way to increase diversity within companies is to focus on inclusion and on commonalities and having shared goals. So rather than emphasizing people's differences, emphasizing the ways they are more similar.
That's actually exactly the point of the exercise.
The way that they have common, to create a group, an in-group mentality. So instead of saying, oh, we're different here and here, well, we're going to create our own in-group, because if you're on a team and you're all wearing blue shirts and there's a team wearing red shirts and you have like this solid group identity and goal, then you're going to work better together and you're not going to look at each other's differences in a negative way as much. But anyway, but that's such a long conversation.
But I want to make a comment because you're actually, it was interesting that's what that's how you interpret it, because my point is exactly the opposite. You showcase that you have commonality with people that you presumed you're different. And that type of exercise forces you to go into the corner with different people that you thought you have nothing in common, but actually turns out you do. It's meant to emphasize commonality. But I take your point, because clearly if some people will take it as a as a point of emphasizing differences, then it defeats the purpose. Yes. That's why I was kind of thinking things that you wouldn't think you have in common with other people. What are those? And then do an exercise around that. But don't tell the audience that's the point up front, obviously, because you want them to experience it for themselves and kind of have that aha moment like, oh my God. You know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Nadia. It's just we only have 1 minute, and I do have to. I just wanted to say, and if people have to go, because I know that it's almost 7:30, but I did want to ask, just especially I know a few of you've been to multiple learning labs, but just in terms of the format and approach and what people bring, what if there's any recommendations or suggestions you have in terms of that format.
Yes. Are you?
You froze.
She froze, but she was asking for what suggestions you may have for the learning lab. Like, is there any different format or a different exercise or anything that would be beneficial?
I think it would be great if people did.
Everyone's gone. I'm sorry. So weird.
No, you're back. I think there was some connectivity issue. I think it would be great if people said up front what their objective was. I mean, we teachers learn we have to have learning objectives whenever we make a lesson plan. And I know in training, it's like the Kirkpatrick's levels. I mean, ideally, you want to know what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? So it seemed like there were a lot of questions about that in these. And it would be great because it would make the presenters think, what is my purpose for doing this? Because, I mean, it's great to be experimenting, but it really helps to know, you know, why are you trying it out? What are you trying to get? And then it would make people focus.
I would agree with that. I would think maybe just like a one pager that, you know, no, and I don't mean like a dissertation. I mean like, you know, what's the purpose of the exercise? Who are we? Are we first level leaders? Are we senior executives? Are we call center reps? Who are we to be? And what's your one, not several, but what's one expected outcome that you're looking for or you're testing, and keep it that simple. You know, so
I love it.
It wouldn't even have to be like written. It could just be stating at the beginning.
You could be stating it right. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's
it would be good though, I think, to have it in the chat, even just as a reference.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Just something like that. And then I know that, you know, the timing is always, this is my first time experiencing it. I loved it.
Yeah.
I actually would love to try something out myself. So I absolutely love the idea of it. And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to participate, because I think this is what the community of learning is all about. It's helping one another with whatever it is they need when they need it. So, so I'm a big fan of it. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. I don't know whose idea it is, but it's great. Bravo.
Yeah. It was Gabrielle's idea.
Yeah, and we'll be posting this video and then the one of the previous session as well. I'm behind in putting them up on the website, but I'll be putting that up over the weekend. So definitely check it out. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and hope to see you again next time.
Yeah.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Kate, do you want to stay on for a few minutes? Stop recording.
Can I stop recording?